Hello, I'm Peter from the European region, supporting associations in good governance. One of the elements that helps is doing a GSAT. GSAT is an assessment with a lot of dimensions and criteria where you can reflect on your risks. So risk management is one of the good governance tools. And in that GSAT, there's one dimension criteria that says that an association should regularly do a risk assessment. What is risk? Risk assessment is doing a systematic, structured approach to identify, evaluate, and reducing the risks you have in your association. Identify is one of the first step. Second step is evaluate. Then we have methods you can use. Then a decision to make, and then to follow up to monitor everything. Those first three steps, identify, evaluate, methods, we call it the risk analysis. And the two last steps, the fourth and the fifth, is then the execution you do based on this risk assessment. You have to be careful that not every risk can be predicted. So there are many risks that are kind of a bit less, a little bit more what happens today. But sometimes there can be what's called a black swan, something unpredictable. And you can only have kind of a process in place to handle these processes, these events, and to control the damage that happened. But it's not possible to predict what will happen. We don't have that glass ball to see in. If you look at the first step to identify, we have four main perspectives. We put them in the SILO acronym, which means that there's a strategic perspective. We look at how strategic elements can influence our image of the association, or financial situation, or other big elements on strategic level. We have the I for information, which kind of also includes social media, but also reports that are correct or not correct, and the data we use to make our decisions. Of course, we have the legal part, laws that influence the way you can handle things and how to create your scouting environment. And lastly, we have the operational level. That's kind of all the processes we have in place where the real action happens. And there are a lot of risks in there too. For strategy level, we can use the PESTLE or SWOT analysis to dive into the many topics we can identify. If you want to know more about PESTLE and SWOT, I would refer you to strategic discussions and workshops, which is much further explained. From the part of information, we can also identify four different parts. We have the process transaction information, we have management information, decision support, and executive information, which means like decision support is information you need to make a decision. Do we have enough leaders for next year? Do we have enough money to do a project? And the management information looks like in a broader perspective. Do we have enough volunteers in your association? And so on. And the executive information is then more on a strategic level. A lot of kinds of information we can take into account, and there could be risks in it if we don't have it, or if it's not correct, or it's too late. On the operational level, we have the SIPOC as a method, which looks like there's a supplier, there's input, there's a process, there's output, and there's a customer. And each of these steps can have some problems, some issues, like the customer, the client, is he happy of the process? The output, is it the output that the customer wanted? Is it on the right time? Is it around the right amount? The process itself, is it delayed? Is it working well? Is the effort okay? What was the input for the process? And who was the supplier? Is it the right stakeholder or shareholder who delivered that? Is it trustful, that supplier? So there are many processes you can look at, like the recruitment of a new chief commissioner. There's the suppliers or all the people in the association already. What is the input? The how do we call it? Resume. Then we have the process of selection, and then we will have an output, the election, and we see if the association and the new CEO or chief commissioner is happy. So this was the part of the identification. Then we have the evaluation as a second step. And therefore we use the FMEA risk evaluation tool. We have first a process where we put all the steps we have, and then we identify the risks. And for each of these risks, we can define what is the possible impacts of these risks, what is the severity, the probability that it happens, and then the inspection. So for the impact, there's a severity, for the probability is the frequency, and for the detection, for the inspection, we have the possibility to detect too late or really early. And if we combine these three numbers and we multiply them, we got a risk priority number. The highest risk priority numbers are the ones we will tackle first. So an example could be that we hire someone for a project, and the process steps are, we could say, have the vacancy out, then have some job interviews, and then have a contract ready. And a risk on the moment of a contract could be that the person has another job or job offer, and that the person choose another job to do and not the ones we had offered. The effect is that we have to start again from the beginning, so quite high severity. The cause is that there are more jobs in life for people, and we can't have this in control. But the frequency is that it doesn't happen that much. If we had a good clearance with the volunteer or the possible employee before, then it won't happen that much. And when do we detect it? When we can see if it's going wrong? Maybe a little bit too late, because we are already on the phase of a contract. So the damage is that we have to redo the whole recruitment process. So this could be a high risk priority number, something to think about. After this, you need to do some actions, and these actions are part of project management, and there are a lot of tools you can use at that moment. These methods, part 3 of the 5 steps, can be like a fishbone diagram where you look at different angles, different perspectives of a problem. It's not only the first thing you come up with, but the different views around the table when you do the brainstorm of risk management should be different and diverse to tackle different angles, like methods you use, maybe Mother Nature, communication, information, all different perspectives. Another tool could be thinking about what is really the cause, and ask 5 times why. Why was this? Why was that? And if you can tackle the root cause, then the solutions will be probably better. Another possibility to take care that your risks won't happen is pokayoke. And pokayoke is a Japanese term that means that mistake proven, that you put a measure in place that you help a person not to make the mistake. Like in a car, when you forget to switch off your lights, then there's a signal that, oh, you forgot, and you can turn it off. Or in the kitchen, you have gas you use to heat, and normally the gas doesn't have a smell. If you put a smell in it, you know, oh, I forgot to switch off the gas, and some accidents will not happen. So the third method is to be smart and not to be fragile, and to be diverse. So the different problems that come to you are tackled in an easy way by being flexible. So if you have a glass, you can make it thicker and thicker. So when it falls down, at the end it still will break. But if you make the cup out instead of glass from rubber, if it falls down, it still is not broken. So you can think about solutions that are taking into account the possible risks, and in that way you don't have any issues at the end. Then there's time to take a decision depending on which of the issues you had. We look at 5 methods to take a decision. You can avoid the risk by just doing nothing, staying at home. Sometimes it's needed to do another project because it's too big risk. But remember, nothing done, nothing harmed, but also nothing learned. And scouting is an environment where we try in a safe environment to take at least small risks to do and to learn. Accept the risks. There are some risks that will happen. A parent will sometimes not be happy with an activity. Then we are there to explain why, but we take the risk and we try to have a fun activity. The third one is to compensate. Maybe there's another solution where we can have a different methods, which also includes new risks, but they are not as big as the earlier risk. Transfer the risk to someone else, another organization. Like if you have a training in climbing and you don't have the money or the time to train all your trainers to have the right certificates, you can outsource that training to a recognized, certified organization who does that job for you. And lastly, there's reduce. Then we look again to the risk priority numbers. How can we reduce the occurrence? How can we reduce the severity or speed up the detection? And then the fifth step, impact monitoring. It's important to each year, again, look at your schedule and your list of all risks and try to reevaluate it, because everything is changing around it. Change is constant, so take care that you reconsider all these risks. Maybe there are new ones, there are others that are not relevant anymore because your activities changed or the organization's perspective changed in certain topics. At the end, it's all important that risks are also opportunities, and the idea is that you should trust and feel safe and challenge these risks and have a nice moment together to discuss these and reflect on it. Thank you and success with your risk management.